On the 5th of December 1952, a woman in London walked outside and could not see her own feet. Not the pavement, her feet. Over the next 5 days, thousands of people in that city would breathe in something they could not avoid, and they would die of it, and almost nobody would notice at the time. There were no sirens, nobody evacuated, people went to work, and by the time it lifted, more Londoners had died than in any single night of the Blitz. Let's start with why it happened, because it wasn't just fog. London had always had fog. It sits in a river valley, it's cold and damp, and the city had been famous for it for centuries. They called the bad ones pea soupers, and for generations they were an inconvenience, not a threat. What made December 1952 different was three things arriving at the same time. The first was cold. That week was unusually freezing, so every household in London was burning coal harder than normal. And here's the detail that matters most. The good coal was being exported. Britain was rebuilding after the war and desperately needed foreign currency, so the high-grade, low-sulfur coal went overseas, and what got sold to British homes was cheap, dirty, high-sulfur coal. Millions of chimneys were pushing sulfur dioxide into the air over the city, all day, all night. The second was wind. There wasn't any. An anticyclone had settled over southern England and the air over London simply stopped moving. The third is the part most people have never heard of, a temperature inversion. Normally, air gets colder the higher you go. That's why smoke rises. It's warmer than the air above it, so it keeps climbing until it thins out and disperses. But under an anticyclone, a layer of warm air can settle on top of a layer of cold air, and the normal order gets reversed. The cold air at street level cannot rise because the warmer air sitting above it is lighter. It becomes a lid. London put a lid on itself. So the smoke from 1,000,000 chimneys went up a few hundred feet, hit the ceiling, and came back down. Then the next hour's smoke did the same thing, and the next, for 5 days. What formed wasn't fog, it was an aerosol. Water droplets with sulfur dioxide dissolved inside them, and within those droplets a chemical reaction was running. The sulfur dioxide was oxidizing into sulfuric acid. People were breathing a suspension of dilute acid, and it went straight into the lungs. Visibility in central London dropped below 1 foot in places. Buses ran with a conductor walking ahead of the vehicle holding a lantern, and then they stopped running at all. Ambulances could not find the addresses they were sent to. The Isle of Dogs recorded fog so thick that people reported being unable to see their own hands held out in front of them. Cinemas closed, not because anyone thought it was dangerous, but because the audience could not see the screen through the air inside the building. At Sadler's Wells, a performance of La Traviata was abandoned partway through when the fog rolled into the auditorium and the singers could no longer be seen from the stalls. At Smithfield Market, prize cattle brought in for a livestock show began to suffocate. Their handlers tied cloth soaked in whiskey over the animals' noses to try to filter the air. It did nothing. 12 of them died, and through all of it, people kept going to work. This is the part that's hardest to picture now. Londoners had lived with fog their entire lives, and their parents had, and their grandparents had. There was no mechanism anywhere in the culture for the idea that weather could kill you. The government issued no warnings, because the government did not know either. The first real signal that something had gone wrong did not come from any hospital or any health authority. It came from undertakers running out of coffins and florists running out of flowers. That was how London found out. The official death toll afterward was around 4,000 people. That figure stood for decades, and it was wrong. Later, analysis looked at excess mortality in the weeks and months that followed and put the real total closer to 12,000. The reason it was missed is that the deaths were quiet, not people collapsing in the street. The elderly, the very young, and people with existing heart and lung conditions dying at home over the following weeks, in numbers that only appear when you compare them against a normal December. And the initial official response was to deny it entirely. The government's position was that the excess deaths had been caused by an influenza epidemic. Records examined much later showed influenza could not account for anything close to those numbers. It took 4 years of argument to pass the Clean Air Act of 1956, which created smokeless zones across the city and pushed households toward gas and electricity. The last severe London smog came in 1962. After that, they stopped happening. Here's what stays with me about that week. Nothing in it was an accident, and nothing malfunctioned. Every chimney worked exactly as designed. Every household was doing the most ordinary thing imaginable, keeping warm in December. The disaster was assembled entirely out of normal behavior, and the only unusual ingredient was that the air stopped moving. And it hasn't stopped being relevant. Air pollution is still estimated to contribute to millions of deaths a year worldwide, and almost none of them look like a disaster while they're happening. They look like weather. In December of 1952, for 5 straight days, London was dying, and the people it was killing thought it was just a bad fog.